Welcome to Loving Me Before I Love You with Tammy Nicole, the podcast dedicated to you loving and putting yourself first. Others have come first in your life for years, and you know it's time for that to change. You're about to be empowered to set healthy boundaries, confidently have hard conversations, unapologetically put yourself first, and live the peaceful life you deserve. Remember, self-love is essential, and loving yourself sets the stage for every other love in your life. So get ready to embrace self-love like never before with your host, Coach Tammy Nicole.
Hey, Transformation Tuesday over at Loving Me Before I Love You. I am your host, Tammy Nicole. I just have a couple of questions for you. Have you ever reacted to something and later thought, why did I respond like that? Maybe it was a small disagreement or you felt like you were being rejected. Maybe it was someone raising their voice at you and your body immediately went into defense mode. Maybe you shut down. Maybe you over-explained, or maybe you walked away before you could even leave yourself. Like you just like, I'm not dealing with this. I'm walking away. I don't have time for it. You almost ask yourself during these times, am I too sensitive? Am I too emotional? Am I doing too much? Am I too much? But what if you're not too much? What if your body is just remembering something your mind tried to forget? See, trauma isn't always the big dramatic event that people talk about or think about often. Sometimes it's growing up in a home where love felt unpredictable. Sometimes it's constantly being criticized. Sometimes it's being the strong one for everyone else and never feeling safe enough to fall apart. Trauma is not weakness, it's adaptation. Your nervous systems learn how to protect you. So your patterns are learned how do I survive this? How do I move forward? How do I get through what I'm experiencing? And now as an adult, those same survival skills might be showing up in your relationships, in your work environments, your parenting, your sense of self. It may show up places you never thought that it would. And here's the truth. That sets people free. Ready? You're not broken. Your body did exactly what it was designed to do. The question now is not what's wrong with me. The question is, what happened to me and how do I heal from it? That's what we're unpacking today. Today's episode is titled The Science of Trauma and Healing. Today, it's like, I have something that has happened to me typically during childhood that has been bedded inside of me. And I need to know, how do I navigate it from a healthy perspective? And I have the perfect person to help us navigate all of this. I'm joined today by someone who understands both the emotional and the physiological impact of trauma and the path towards real recovery. Her name is Alinda Quinn, actually. And she is a trauma recovery coach who helps individuals move from survival mode into safety, empowerment, and wholeness. She breaks down the science behind trauma responses and guides people through practical healing strategies that restore the nervous system and rebuilds trust. Welcome to the show, Alinda.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. I'm so glad you're here. Trauma,
Great.
I always and often say, the trauma for you may not be the trauma for me, but trauma is trauma, and we need to be free.
Agreed.
So I'm so glad that you could join us and we can actually talk about trauma. We hear it so often. When I think about relationships, I think a lot of us have trauma bonded into the relationships that we have versus, making healed decisions and choices.
Right.
And so I do want to dive in fairly quickly as into when we talk about the science of trauma, what is actually happening in the brain and nervous system on bare, like from the foundation, like what's happening to us in
Okay.
general?
Okay. That's a great question. A wonderful question. And we could talk a whole lot about the science of trauma and just not even really move beyond into how it connects to your emotions and all those other things, just trying to get the nuts and bolts of this. I would like to go backwards one step and just say when we talk about the science of trauma, we are including the nervous system, but it's important to think of it as the body. We're really talking about the body when we talk about the science of trauma and all the systems in the body. But the big system is the nervous system because it's the one that controls everything. And so when we talk about the science of trauma, we talk about the ways that our brains and our nerves and different parts of our nervous system, different branches of our nervous system have been impacted in ways that we live our lives in some ways, in constant response, because our nervous system's job is to keep us safe. And as young people, if we're talking, if we're narrowing in on people who had early chronic trauma or abuse, we're talking about potentially years and years and years of learning to avoid the bad things and stay safe. And so your brain becomes rewired. We talk about the brain being plastic, which means it can move in response to its environment, and it does do that. And over time, the trauma can shape and reshape our brains. And so it's really important that we understand that connection between brain and body, brain and emotion, brain and mind, brain and spirit, all of those things.
Everything works together, right? Ultimately,
Yes.
is the bigger picture or the bigger point. I think understanding how they work together is important, but on the other side of it, it's also how do I navigate it if I, one, haven't healed from it, and two, want to move forward and develop what I call healthy living, healthy experiences. So when we talk about the science and we talk about the fact that it's, our nervous system is involved with it, give us, I don't even want to say step by step, but give us the importance of actually doing the work in order to heal and why it's important. Like, why should we actually do the work? Some people don't think you have to do the work. Some people think you just acknowledge the fact that you've had trauma and then move on, move forward. But why is doing the work to heal that trauma so important?
Okay. That's another very interesting question. I think that we want to understand this concept of attachment because that's where it starts. We understand that in our earliest stages of life, our most intimate caregivers are who we look to for attachment. And if that attachment isn't healthy and doesn't meet the needs of the child, if the child is always having to reach out and get louder and louder to have needs met and those kinds of things, then the child learns that they can't depend on the world around them. And so the brain tells them, don't cry out, don't reach for people, don't ask for help. That's an example of what it does to the nervous system. And so what happens is our brains, like I said, are plastic, which means life experiences shape our brains and our nervous system throughout all of our life experiences. And it just makes sense that if all these experiences can change our brain, then the positive experiences can too. And so the more we learn to lean into more healthy things, even if they're difficult, your brain over time learns, wait a minute, I don't have to react, respond. I can sit with this trigger, whatever it is for the moment, and I can re-narrate the situation, or I can tell myself new stories, or I can do the breathing, or I can incorporate movement, or I can do the things that my coach has taught me to do. And your brain learns new ways. Instead of reacting, you are responding, and it's not reactionary. It's a healthy response. And we like to say that trauma is an appropriate response to a terrible situation. It doesn't feel like an appropriate response because we feel out of control, and especially when our nervous systems get hijacked and we don't know what to do with it. But the truth is, these reactions make sense because your brain created you so that you would be scared at appropriate times. You would be hypervigilant at certain times, and you survive. And so celebrate your brain in that it may feel like it's betraying you, but the truth is it got you this far. And you just learn new ways to shape your brain by behaving differently, moving differently, interacting with people differently. And that's the work. And it's hard work because you're doing things differently than you've ever done them, and you're having to trust and open up.
So when people are seeing things in their relationships, in their work environment with coworkers, in their friendships in general, that show up from their unhealed version of themselves, what are the signs that says that kind of came from a trauma in childhood, or that's trauma induced versus?
Okay. Well, there are a few different things. I'm going to add that a part of all of this process, a part of that needs to be a connection with someone that you trust. And so we're assuming that you can have someone that you trust, and if not, that would be a goal. So they can kind of also give you feedback on, hey, sometimes you behave this way or that way. But I think one thing that we can use as a clue is how regulated we feel. Do we feel calm? What's our body telling us? Is our heart racing? Are our thoughts racing? Are we sweating? Are we shaking? It's very common to feel like a tightness in the chest or a tightness in the abdomen or in the shoulders. We carry a lot of trauma in our hips. It's really important to start to know your body and to know, oh, wait a minute, every time we talk about, I don't know, XYZ, I get this chest pain. That's not, there's a connection there. What happened between me and that person, or what happened with that situation many years ago that's triggering me, that's making me think about this. So learning to pay attention to your body and your reaction, and noticing that sometimes the reactions might feel a little tougher to reel in than in others. And there may be something connected around those things.
That's really good. We talk about regulation all the time, but I don't think people break down what that really looks like or what it is.
Okay.
Having self-regulation for some people, they may be doing it based upon the knowledge base of the word itself, like to regulate is to put things in order or to, reorganize or realign.
Right.
But they may not understand what that really means personally, physically, when you talk about regulating your nervous system or regulating your emotions or being self-regulated, period. What does that really mean and look like?
Well, what that really means is your nervous system has various states and various types of reaction where you might go into fight, flight, freeze, fawn. You have different reactions. That is when your nervous system has kind of been hijacked and you're very much into parasympathetic, which is where all the emotions and different things happen. And what you want to do, I'm sorry, the other way around. What you want to do is you want to get into the part of the autonomic nervous system that we call rest and digest, and that is the parasympathetic. And so I guess I should be more concrete here. We want to do what we can to return to a state that is as simplified as possible, where we're focused on air coming in and out, the movement of our body, the feelings of our body and our clothing, the feeling of our body in the chair. Regulating essentially means my body is in tune, my heart is in tune with my mind, is in tune with my gut, is in tune with my surroundings, is in tune with my little baby boy sitting next to me. And you have all these ways of regulating. And co-regulating, by the way, is where it's at. The connection. We preach connection. And so co-regulation is what happens when you have an infant child who has healthy parents who answer that child's cry, who go to that child and keep the diapers changed and play with them and engage with them. Then what happens is you can actually kind of borrow someone else's nervous system that's calmer And so one way to re-regulate is to lean into someone who is regulated and have that co-regulation. But regulation just really means, what state is your nervous system in? Is your nervous system in like a safe, I'm safe and I'm focused on breathing and rest? We call it rest and digest, that part of our nervous system. Is that where I am? Because if we're way up in sympathetic and in the emotional aspects of our nervous system, then we're not making logical decisions. We feel out of control. We don't always connect the emotion to the thought because we're not clear in our minds. So those are some examples of regulation versus dysregulation.
Can trauma be fully healed, or is it something that we learn to manage?
This is a really hard question. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer based on my healing experience blended with my knowledge and training and what I've seen in people. And that is that it depends on what you mean by healing. Does healing happen? I mean, healing can happen and it can continue to happen over a lifetime, and you can get to safety and you can live a life where you're primarily in safety. Fully healed makes the question a little trickier because I'm not sure what fully versus partially means. I think of it in very simplistic terms. When you get hurt, when you get wounded, it oftentimes, depending on how it has impacted you, it could leave a scar. The scar is always there. Does it always hurt? No. Does it sometimes hurt? Maybe. Do you sometimes rub up against it and have bad memories of what happened? Sure. But are you dysregulated? Are you feeling out of control? Are you able to manage your emotions? Are you doing okay in relationships? All those things are signs of healing. And healing feels really rotten before it feels really good. I wanted to make that point while I'm here. Like, your brain is learning to redo life, right? So that's a lot. It's a lot to carry. So it's complicated. But I think you can get to a place where you're mostly acting from a healed perspective. I think there's not, clients will say, when do I get there? And I just want to, I don't know where there is. And there may be therapists or coaches out there who do, but I don't know where there is. I think self-love and connection is the answer, is where we want to be.
Absolutely. Right. So yeah. I'm glad that you even went there because, that's typically what I do. Right. But I asked the question the way I asked it for a reason, because I think a lot of times people think that there is an end game, that there is a stopping point. And I feel personally that healing is forever. You're always healing, simply because there are going to be dynamics and avenues and, different angles of that same circumstance that's going to pop up every time that you didn't know exists. Every piece of trauma to me has blind spots. You think you're addressing one area, you do the work for it, 10 years down the line, same trauma, different angle pops up, and you're like, man, I really thought I was over this. Like, I really thought I had worked all the way through it and, really took the time to either forgive those that were involved or, have a full understanding of what took place and how I'm now supposed to respond towards the different, like, you have that feeling like, I thought I had done that. And then you hit a spot and it's like, not quite. This little angle over here, you didn't address that little angle over there. And it's like, that's why it's forever healing. You're always on a healing journey. But I loved how you addressed it to say, like, hey, like, there is no per se end or there. We say, have I made it there yet? Like, have I reached the end point? And it's like, yeah, no, I don't think you ever reach the end. I think you always learn how to adjust. You always learn what works today, because everybody that you involve yourself with may not hit the same button in the same spot, but they
exactly. And we all have buttons. And we all hit them different times, different ways. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes out of the blue. Sometimes it's a button that you thought was deactivated, like you said, a decade ago. And then, oh my gosh, it's been reinstalled. What do I do with this? But at that point, you know how to do the work. You've been doing the work. And so you just know, okay, I've gotten through some of these similar ones.
Mhm.
I can get through this again.
Yeah, that's a good point too. You have the tools. The difference in not doing any work and being completely unhealed is lack of toolage. When you're doing the work, having the tools, adjusting. It's like if you have a tool bag that has a bunch of screwdrivers in it. You may need a flathead the last time, but this time you need the Phillips. Or you may need the fancy ones that nobody have the name for them. They just know it's not quite a Phillips, but it's got these little extra squares on them and it just kind of fits a little funky. And it's like having the tool bag is what really matters. So when you're unhealed, not working towards it, you don't even have a bag to fill through. You don't even have any level of toolage to try to navigate. And I think that that's the key. The key is, do you have a bag of tools to even try to work through it?
And I think equally important, I keep coming back to this, equally important is that you have at least one or two people in your life who really can walk the walk with you. And it's amazing when you if you don't have that one or two people, if you manage in life to somehow find that connection, the people around you become tools in a way as well. So it's really important to know you don't have to do it alone. And your nervous system loves connection.
Wow, today's episode is a good one. I know you're enjoying it, and we'll get back to it shortly. Just wanted to take a quick break to let you know that Tammy would love for you to share any questions, comments, or topic ideas you have with her. All you have to do is send them to her in an email to podcast@IamTammyNicole.com. Thank you, and without further ado, let's get back into today's show.
A 100%. But when you think about that or talk about that, let's talk about the trauma bonding that people do that may not necessarily be so healthy, because we think it's healthy, right? When we think about connecting with people, we typically think to connect with those that have things in common, right? So when you are dating, and I say dating from a friendship perspective, platonically as well as dating romantically, you are constantly looking for the common ground, right? It's like, what do we have in common? So even when it's things that are what I call negative or trauma based, we find that to be attractive. It's like, oh, you went through that? I went through that. Ooh, right? Like we low key get excited because we feel like someone has full understanding. And so if you can understand my pain, then you can understand me. And I think that it sounds good, but it's unhealthy. And I think because we think it's supposed to be something that connects us, it's really something that just drags us down. Can we talk about how we shouldn't really be doing that?
Sure. Yeah, we can talk about the trauma bond, especially, is a really important concept when you're healing and trying to navigate relationships, because we do, especially, again, going back to those who had really a lot of chaos and what we call complex trauma in their childhood trauma, on layers on layers on layers of trauma. What feels like love is really chaotic and out of control and unpredictable and dramatic and big emotions all over the place all the time. And while there can be love present in a situation like that, that's not the definition of love, but that's what we go, well, I love my parents and they were out of control or drinking or yelling, and so this is, the only way I'm ever seen is if I'm yelled at. The only way I've ever heard is if I'm forced to say things I don't want to say. And, and this is kind of what you learn. And so you tend to go, well, that feels normal because the familiar is comfortable.
Yeah.
Even though it's painful, it's comfortable too, because we can sit in it and know what to expect. As no matter how awful it is, we know what that awful is going to look like.
Right.
And so it feels comforting. So we do attach ourselves to people who also have trauma. But the issue becomes two things. One is the person you're attaching yourself to, are they doing the work? Are you both doing the work? Because there's a chance. There's a chance for you if you both have some trauma, but you're both doing the work. It doesn't have to turn into something unhealthy. But another way that a trauma bond happens is when you have someone who has specific types of personality disorders where they don't know how to attach appropriately to people, and they use people, they suck the life out of them, they take advantage of people, they have a heightened sense of self, things like that. We call them cluster B personality disorders. And they can do what we call love bombing. You may have talked about this on your show. They do the love bombing and they form this bond, and you think it's love, but it's really like you're a fly on that fly paper, right? Like you're just stuck to them and you're holding on for dear life, and it feels so good at first because all the promises, et cetera, et cetera. And then all of a sudden you go, wait a minute. They start taking away the good, sprinkling in abusive things. And over time, what you thought was love is a very sick and unwell bond between two unwell people who aren't doing their work.
Absolutely. I think a lot of times too, we think, again, like I mentioned a moment ago, that it's a common ground. So it's like something that we should really attach ourselves to. But when you talk about people doing the work and doing the healing process, and like if we're both doing it together, that to me would mean that I met you in a group, right? Like if we were in a mom's healing group, or some type of group that is like subject focused, and now we're in here and we're all working on this thing together, and this is how we met and this is how we connected. When we meet people in general and we're literally connecting because of our trauma, I think a lot of times no one's talking about the healing process. Everybody is like in their trauma, like they're operating out of it. And it is something that they have connected on and they're moving through life with. And even if, as you mentioned, the chaos happens because chaos is common, or because chaos is my normal, I don't see nothing wrong with it. And so we have two unhealthy, trauma-driven, bonded individuals connected, growing, and I say growing lightly, but moving in a direction together that may not be beneficial.
It may not, right.
For either one of them in the end.
Yeah. And ideally, you're going to do the bulk of your healing when you're not in a relationship. Ideally, you're going to be in a relationship, in a love affair with yourself. That's the kind of commitment it takes to have healing. You have to make up your mind that this is the life I want, and these are the things I will tolerate, the things I will not tolerate. These are the things I will consume. These are the things I will not consume. And you have to decide that for yourself. And that's part of the healing process. That's the process of elimination. Like, what do I need to do for myself? And if someone comes along and they become a factor, like if you're starting to make decisions based on what they need, it's not necessarily bad because you do that in relationships, but your primary focus for at least a period of time in your life needs to be on your own healing. And it's just much more productive to do that before you enter into a relationship.
Yeah, I think that, it's funny that you just said that, because I do think that, yes, you heal solo as far as the big chunk, right? The foundational piece. But I don't think that you move into that final leg of healing until you reconnect with people. And
Amen.
The other person helps the other side of healing actually become reality. So I remember being a kid and listening to my uncle. He was a preacher, so he was doing a sermon, and he was talking about how a woman was saying, "Oh, I'm doing good. I'm not engaging in any type of sexual sin, blah, 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 blah."
Mm-hmm.
And you want to praise somebody that says, "Good job. I'm so proud of you. You're following the rules." But if I ask you this one question, are you having offers? Are they
Okay.
are they engaging with you to allow the opportunity for the sexual sin to actually happen? If your answer
Mm-hmm.
to that question is no, then what are you really doing? Nothing. You're not
Mm-hmm.
being propositioned. You're not being placed in temptation. You're not having all of these things actually make you make a choice to say, I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing something to make myself follow the rules, or I'm being
Right.
obedient to something. If you don't have, if nobody's tempting you, if you don't have, that don't count.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk about healing without people, you've done the basics, but until
Mm-hmm.
you test it, it doesn't count. Like, you think you've done a lot of things, and you
Mm-hmm.
may have, by all means. You may have gone through the history of your life. You may have done a lot of forgiving. You may have come up with all the boundaries that you want to create for yourself. You may have become super self-aware of how you show up when you're around other people. You may have increased your emotional intelligence and emotional maturity. But without interacting with other people to see how that shows up in real time,
Mm-hmm.
what are we really doing?
Right.
So I 100%
I
agree
agree.
with you when you mention you need one or two people around you during that process, because the reality is
Mm-hmm.
this: without testing it,
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and we know that trauma is the great disconnector. That's one of the heartbreaking parts of trauma. It disconnects us from our world, from our friends, from our God, from our families,
mhm,
from ourselves. It disconnects us. And part of what healing from trauma looks like is learning how to be safe in spaces with other people and to keep yourself safe
mm,
and to choose safe people wisely. That's part of the healing as well.
awesome. So that brings me to, what are the first practical steps someone can take when they're I can't talk, when they are ready to start healing from their trauma?
Okay. There are myriad things that folks can do. I say spend a little bit of time getting used to this feeling. Maybe you're new to this. Maybe you're scared.
Mm,
So spend some time sitting with that and thinking, okay, um, and how do I want to do this? Do I want to, I want to do group, maybe join a group, or do I just want to talk to some friends? Do I just want to pray over this? Like, think about how you want to start. But some things that I feel like are useful are things like journaling. And even if you don't like to journal, it's really useful because sometimes your brain writes things on the page that you didn't know were in there. And it's just this phenomenon that I can't explain, but as a writer, it happens where you just let yourself go. And sometimes you'll go back and you go, wow, I didn't know I felt that way. And so the journaling can kind of give you, it can kind of help you with some housekeeping, like, oh, I'm feeling this way, and I'm reacting this way and that way. And so that can help you kind of track that. And even if you don't like to journal a long time, it can help you get in touch with what you think your issues are. I would also, if you feel comfortable, enlist the support of a good friend or family member or someone who can just kind of sit and hold space with you while you talk about things and figure things out and look for some direction. I think if this is trauma that you're looking at, I think, like we've talked about this whole time, happens in communities. So when you're ready, when you feel secure enough, it's good to find yourself some sort of community, even if it's a community of one, if it's a therapist or a coach, or but you want to look for somebody who's really steeply trained and specifically in trauma to help you through that. And do your homework, research different professionals, look at do research about trauma recovery. I have a blog, lots of trauma professionals have blogs, do some reading of some things, get an idea for what are the kinds of issues that trauma that I typically would be dealing with. And so you just educate yourself going in. But definitely when you're ready, you need to have that connection with another person and kind of figure out where to go from there. If you want it to be a very structured kind of recovery, or if you just want to join a group that's kind of laid back.
What would be signs for them to say, this person is skilled or trained in trauma that is beneficial for me to say, let's move forward?
Okay. Does this person seem to hear you? Like, do they hear what you're saying, or they just seem to be waiting to tell you what they think about what you're saying? Or are they actually soaking in what you're saying and hearing it and holding that space for what you have to say? That's important. Do you feel safe with that person? Do you feel like they're on your team? Do you feel like they're on your side? Do you feel like they're going to try to avoid triggering you unnecessarily? Do you feel a sense of safety with this person? You want to look at their training. And there are lots of great training programs, and you can do some research on different training programs and see what you think about them. But you definitely want something where they've had a deep dive into trauma. I think, and this is just me, I'm a very spiritual based person, and I think there's a lot of times there's just a knowing. And I don't want to say that because I don't want you to go into a session and go, well, I didn't feel that spiritual thing, and so they must be wrong for me, because that's not always true. But I think sometimes our instincts are beautiful, but abuse and trauma dulls that. It makes us believe, well, no, we don't know what we're talking about, because every time we do something, we get in trouble, so we don't trust our instincts anymore. Our instincts are good. So think of your instincts. If something's niggling in there, it doesn't feel right, pay attention to that. Look at, like, what is your feeling? What is your gut feeling? What is your spirit telling you?
Awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Because I think a lot of us do negate and dismiss our very inner intuition.
That inner voice. It's
we
smart.
don't, and that's because we don't trust ourselves, right? And sometimes the trauma in our lives can lead us to that place of being untrusting for ourselves. We put more, and I always do this with my clients. I'm like, you put more trust in someone else than you. Heartbreaking as that sounds.
Yeah.
Reality, though, is that if you really think about it, you do trust yourself. You just don't acknowledge that you do, because you trusted yourself enough to trust them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of times we don't see it that way because it's so finite, it's so small, it's so almost like if I didn't say it, you didn't see it.
Yeah.
You know? And so you trust yourself, you just think you're not, but you are, because you're trusting other people. And in order to trust them, you have to trust you. In order to do anything with others, you have to do it with you first. You may not be doing it intentionally with you, which is the problem. And so what we really want you to do is to start being more intentional in the things that you do with others for yourself first, so that when you do it with others, you do it with them right.
And in that same vein, I'm just thinking, once you are making that leap and learning to trust yourself, to choose other people wisely, don't forget to celebrate that. I'm all about celebrating. Yeah. Celebrate all the milestones. Celebrate anything you look at and go, I couldn't do this a year ago. I couldn't do this 3 months ago. This hurt 6 months ago. Today, it's okay. don't forget to celebrate that, because you did the work. No matter how amazing your therapist or coach is, you don't heal without your own participation. So you get credit for doing the work.
Facts. I love that. Trauma sounds bad because of the word itself.
Yeah.
Reality, it's all an experience.
Mm-hmm.
Good, bad, or indifferent. It's all an experience. So what message would you give to someone who feels stuck in their healing journey?
I think stuck means different things to different people. I think probably the most important thing would be to try to lean into the calm portion of your nervous system, monitor your breathing. And I'm talking just in an instant, not overall feeling stuck, but just in an instant when you have those moments. Remember to breathe, get some movement, drink some water. There are different kinds of, if you came to me, we would have certain activities that I could give you that would help your nervous system get back to a calm state. I think the thing is that just to trust, maybe I'm stuck here because the universe said, this is where Alinda needs to be for 10 minutes. This is Alinda where Alinda needs to be for 6 months. And this is why I'm here. And so we look at it and you make a decision, I think, kind of coordinating brain and heart and everything, make the decision that, am I supposed to move out of this and through this? Or am I supposed to sit with this and learn? Because there's a season. There are seasons that we all go through, and we have obligations to ourselves during those seasons. And so look at, am I stuck here because this is a really important time? Mm-hmm. And don't assume that you're stuck because you're bad or you're lazy or you can't do this. So that's the approach that I would start with.
Awesome. If people
Thank you.
wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do so?
The best way to do that is through my email, the name of my, or my social media. I'm on social media as Sacred Space Trauma Recovery. And my email address is alinda@sacredspacetraumarecovery.com. But I have my Facebook is Sacred Space Trauma. My Instagram is Sacred Space Trauma. You can find me and reach out to me there as well.
Awesome. I first want to say thank you so much for coming to give us a little lesson on trauma and healing. A lot of us are embedded into the trauma. We want the healing. Some of us are going after it. Others are scared to do so. But having a knowledge base of what it is and how it affects me and how I interact with other people is super important. So thank you for joining us and providing this level of information. As you guys know, as you're listening week in and week out, I'm a firm believer that self-love is the blueprint. Love yourself so much. The love from others is a bonus. Never, ever, ever put yourself last. Always put yourself first.
Love it.
Oh, awesome. Well, again, join us again here next week. If you have questions, if you have comments, if you have topics that you would like to discuss, don't forget to send the email over to questions@IamTammyNicole.com. I have enjoyed you, Alinda. Thank you.
Mutual, so mutual. Thank you for doing what you do. We gotta keep fighting the good fight.
We do. We do. You guys have a good one. Remember, love yourself first. See you next week.
That's a wrap on another episode of Loving Me Before I Love You. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a second to show your support by subscribing and leaving a positive rating and review on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. Stay connected with Tammy. Make sure you're following her on Instagram and TikTok at Coach Tammy Nicole. If you like to work with Tammy or have any questions you'd like her to answer, please head over to www.IamTammyNicole.com. Until next time, always remember, to love yourself so much that the love from others is a bonus.